Today, the White House taking aggressive action to combat climate change, and it is undoubtedly the strongest stance by any U.S. president on this issue. Paul Bledsoe, an energy analyst for the government, he told the Times that President Obama is, quote, the first American president to permanently push down the U.S. emissions trajectory and get us within striking distance of the kind of global leadership that will be needed to tackle the problem, end quote. It's one of the most aggressive actions ever taken by the federal government on climate change.
This is about protecting our health, and it is about protecting our homes.
Today, the Obama administration proposed a regulation that would cut carbon dioxide emissions from existing power plants by 30% by 2030. Those plants, they are the largest source of greenhouse gases in this country, releasing about 30% of the U.S. carbon pollution. The Obama administration, they're framing this as a consumer issue, not just affecting Americans' wallets, but also their health.
Putting these guidelines in place will help protect the health of vulnerable Americans, including children and the elderly.
But Republicans and some coal state Democrats, they're joining business groups to say the new requirements will have a brutal impact on American jobs.
This is very costly across the economy.
The Chamber of Commerce claims the administration's plan would shrink the economy by an estimated $51 billion and cost 224,000 jobs every year, as well as add to energy costs. The administration, though, fired back.
Critics claim that your energy bills will skyrocket. Well, they're wrong.
But costs are not the main driver of public opinion. A new ABC News Washington Post poll found that Americans see global warming as such a serious threat that 63% say they support regulations even if it raised their own energy costs. Now, the administration does say some coal-producing states will be allowed higher emissions than others. Andrew, listen, it's funny. When we go around the table, I'm curious, Jeannie, from the college campus, but this thing polls well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the business community doesn't like it. I know in an election year, this is going to be a tough thing to swallow when they're trying to, go in the West Virginias and the Kentuckys of the world, let alone some of the red states. But if anybody believes this problem's going to take care of itself without doing something that's going to cause a little pain and some belt tightening, you are delusional. I think this is overdue. Forget about Brave.
Well, it polls well, but it doesn't poll well with a lot of intensity. It's not up there on what voters want as their primary
concern. And let's translate.
Concern.
People like the idea, but they don't live
They're not going to vote based on it. It's not the number one or number two or the number 10 issue for them. But look, yeah, I think most people realize that this is overdue. I think it's now accepted by most people who are not in the Republican Party that climate change is actually a thing and needs to be addressed. And I'm shocked. I'm shocked that the business community is going to say that this is going to cost money and take money, and take dollars out of their profit margins. This is really just about conservation and efficiency. And there's some leeway for the states on how to get these reductions across. It's not necessarily cutting the number of coal burning plants. It's about scrubbing the stuff that's coming out and making sure that the emissions are cleaner. And there are other ways to do that too. I mean, I hope this leads to another discussion about cap and trade, which was a boogeyman issue a few years ago.
Well, does this go anywhere? I mean, that's the shame of it. You almost know this thing's DOA.
I didn't want to have to be the one to say it. That's why I was waiting for the professor to go first. They can't even agree if climate change exists, and so they're going to agree to do this type of program. It might possibly fly in the Senate, but once it reaches the House, as you know, dead on arrival. Now, once this president leaves office...
It's a federal regulation, so Congress has to basically pass a law that would overturn it and force them away from this policy.
Okay, it wouldn't surprise me.
Or you get a Republican in the White House and he just snaps his fingers and they reverse the policy.
It wouldn't surprise me. So, I mean, you would hope that for the good of all of us that something like this would pass, but I'm just highly skeptical.
By the way, they did two veiled shots at me because I spent a better part of one night saying, we all finally are on the same page, climate change is real. And they're like, no, we don't. He goes, we might, but they don't, and they produce all these quotes, so I shut up, and more people don't believe it, I guess, than I care to admit. That said, Jeannie, you're around 20-somethings and late teens, all on different campuses. They get this more than maybe their parents or certainly grandparents do. Enough that they care to do something about it, meaning that this will become one of the policy issues that will have intensity with the under 35 set?
You know, you're absolutely right. They do get it, but still, as Andrew mentioned, it's that issue of intensity, and we're talking about a midterm election. And so are you going to get young people out to vote? Hopefully, but probably not if history is any guide. But here's the thing. So, you know, President Obama does this by executive order, and he's going to try to bait the Republicans into taking action to pull it back and bait them into saying crazy things about the environment. If you remember when Al Gore ran, Dick Morris, who I know you love, came out after and made a great point. Come on, Richard, you love him.
I was in Chicago when the toe-sucking story came out, yes.
But he came out and said it made a great point. The environment is not left, right, or center. It is across the board. Al Gore made a mistake when he ran by not running more strongly on his environmental record. John McCain, Sarah Palin, they all agreed with this in the past. This is like healthcare in my mind. This was a Republican issue at one point. They should have held on to it. To run to the right on this is a big mistake. Even though the intensity is not there for a midterm, this is the kind of thing in 2016 that can kill a presidential candidate if they're forced to say there's no such thing as global warming. Look at what happened with Rubio.
The difference is on healthcare, it was like a boogeyman issue. Death panels, and they're coming. It's going to kill everybody, and that's clearly not the case. There is a counterpoint from conservatives on this, which is it's going to ruin the economy. It's going to cost jobs. My hope is this actually kickstarts the debate that just because you regulate business or you force businesses to take some measure of social action beyond just their bottom line, that it doesn't necessarily stop them from hiring, it doesn't stop businesses from expanding, and that businesses right now, as unfettered as they are, aren't exactly hiring and acting like great corporate citizens.
I think if you look through time, I know we're going to hit a break, but look what FDR did, right, with the New Deal and stuff like that. He went into play, like he created, people don't realize this, when we had the Dust Bowl, he literally had set a whole middle of the country, put a giant thing of trees down the middle of the country, but forested the whole. What I'm trying to say is, if we could figure out in so many of the Rust Belt states and so many, look at upstate New York, whatever, you create alternative energy hubs and say, we're going to eat some money on this for a little bit, but the government's going to subsidize creating these huge solar panel farms or wind farms or alternative energy. I mean, all of a sudden people say, hey, you know what? Create some jobs in my area. I mean, I don't even care about this environment thing, but at least somebody's employing around here. I think you got to actually, more than say it's going to get really bad if we don't do it, just try and do something, because I do think that's the next major, from a macroeconomic standpoint, whoever gets their hands around this, there's going to be huge green jobs in there.
You're starting to see some companies that are actually profiting from those green jobs, from solar, from wind. The problem is that the already in place companies, the companies that are reliant on oil and gas, have so much money and so much influence, they don't want to see that influence eroded.
Nope.
They're spending all sorts of money to stop it.
All right, coming up next here, after months of complaints about Governor Andrew Cuomo that the left, talking about the liberals in New York, well, the Working Family Party, believe it or not, picks its nominee, and it is this guy. Now, we're going to tell you why at the end it worked. We'll pull the curtain back, Dominic Wohl in the backroom politics, and we're going to figure out who actually won or lost in this negotiation. Stay with us.